The year was 2247, and humanity's dreams of exploring the stars had become a gritty reality. Deep space mining crews worked tirelessly in the vast emptiness between planets, searching for valuable resources to fuel Earth's ever-growing needs. It was during one such routine mission that Captain Elise Marlowe and her crew stumbled upon something extraordinary. Elise stood on the bridge of their small mining vessel, Prospector's Hope, staring at the blinking dots on her scanner screen. Her sharp brown eyes narrowed as she leaned closer. "What is that?" she muttered under her breath. The object was massive, far larger than any asteroid or comet they'd encountered before. But what caught her attention wasn't its size. It was how it moved, or rather, didn't move. It drifted silently near the edge of a collapsing star, its surface battered by centuries of cosmic radiation. "Could be debris," said Marcus Kane, the ship's gruff but dependable security officer. He crossed his arms over his chest, his voice tinged with skepticism. "Or just another dead hunk of rock." Elise shook her head. "No. Look at the readings." She pointed to the data scrolling across the monitor. "This thing has artificial materials, metals we don't recognize. And those shapes." She zoomed in on the image captured by their long-range cameras. Jagged edges jutted out from the hull like broken teeth, while faint symbols glowed softly along its surface. Whatever it wasn't natural. Against Marcus's protests, Elise ordered the crew to investigate. As they approached, the scale of the object became clear. It was a starship. A colossal, ancient starship unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Its design was alien, with curves and angles that defied logic. Parts of the hull were scorched black, others pitted with craters caused by micrometeorites. Yet despite its obvious age, there was an eerie sense of life about it. The glowing symbols seemed to pulse faintly, almost as if watching them. When they finally docked and sent a team aboard, the strangeness only deepened. The corridors inside were labyrinthine, twisting in ways that made no sense to human minds. The air smelled metallic, though sensors confirmed it was completely devoid of oxygen. Every step echoed loudly against walls that shimmered like liquid metal, even though they felt cold and solid to the touch. Strange hums reverberated through the ship, low and haunting, as if the vessel itself were alive. Back on Prospector's Hope, the rest of the crew watched nervously as live footage streamed from the exploratory team. Some whispered about curses or ancient traps, while others speculated about treasure troves of alien technology waiting to be discovered. But when the team returned empty-handed, their excitement turned to disappointment. "It's worthless," Marcus declared after hearing the report. "No power systems, no usable tech, just a floating tomb." But Elise wasn't so quick to dismiss it. Something about the ship tugged at her instincts. Those glowing symbols, the way the walls shifted slightly when touched, it all hinted at secrets buried beneath layers of decay. When news reached corporate headquarters back on Earth, executives laughed off the discovery. "A piece of junk," they called it. Even the aliens who sold them the coordinates shrugged, saying it was abandoned for good reason. Yet Elise couldn't shake the feeling that this derelict ship held more potential than anyone realized. She convinced her crew to tow it back to Earth's orbital shipyards instead of leaving it behind. Little did they know, this decision would change everything, for better or worse. As Leviathan, as they began calling it, was dragged through space toward humanity's domain, none aboard could have guessed the horrors and wonders hidden within its silent, ancient heart. Back at Earth's orbital shipyards, Leviathan became the center of attention. News of the mysterious alien starship spread quickly, drawing scientists, engineers, and even curious civilians to the massive structure now docked in orbit. The shipyard buzzed with activity as teams scrambled to study every inch of the derelict vessel. Captain Elise Marlowe stood on a nearby observation deck, her arms crossed as she watched drones swarm around Leviathan. Its jagged silhouette loomed against the backdrop of Earth's blue curve, a silent giant filled with secrets. Dr. Reddy Patel, a wiry man with glasses perpetually sliding down his nose, led the research team. He was one of humanity's top xenotechnologists, a title he wore humbly, despite his brilliance. When he first stepped aboard Leviathan, his excitement was palpable. "This is it," he whispered to himself, running his fingers over the glowing symbols etched into the walls. The chance of a lifetime. But excitement soon gave way to frustration. For weeks, the team worked tirelessly, scanning, probing, and dissecting every part of the ship they could access. Yet no matter what tools they used or how many tests they ran, Leviathan refused to yield its secrets. Its systems were inert, unresponsive to any attempts at activation. Some sections of the ship seemed to shift subtly when touched, but nothing more. To many, it appeared truly dead, just another relic of a forgotten civilization. Elise, however, remained hopeful. She trusted Ravi's instincts and encouraged him to keep pushing forward. One evening, while reviewing data alone in his lab, Ravi noticed something peculiar. Buried deep within the scans of the ship's core was a faint trace of energy, not enough to power anything significant, but present nonetheless. It pulsed irregularly, almost like a heartbeat. Intrigued, Ravi brought the finding to Elise immediately. "This changes everything," he said, pointing to the graph on his tablet. "It means the ship isn't completely dead. There's still some kind of system alive inside it. Dormant, maybe, but not gone." Elise nodded thoughtfully. "So how do we wake it up?" Ravi hesitated. "That's the tricky part. If this ship belongs to the Valeth, and all signs point to that, it likely uses technology far beyond our understanding. We need to find a way to communicate with it. And for that," he gestured to the glowing symbols lining the walls, "we need to crack their language." Deciphering the Valeth script proved maddeningly difficult. Unlike human languages, which followed patterns of syntax and grammar, the symbols seemed fluid, changing slightly depending on context. Sometimes they glowed brighter when approached. Other times, they dimmed entirely. Ravi theorized that the writing wasn't just visual, it might also respond to sound, touch, or even thought. As days turned into weeks, tensions mounted. Military officials grew impatient, questioning whether the project was worth the resources being poured into it. Rumors swirled among rival nations about secret weapons hidden within Leviathan. Some feared tampering with alien tech could unleash catastrophe, while others saw only profit. Corporations offered bribes to gain access, and hackers attempted to infiltrate the shipyard's networks. Amidst the chaos, Ravi made a breakthrough. While studying a particularly intricate panel near the ship's core, he accidentally triggered a response. A low hum reverberated through the corridor, and the symbols lit up in sequence, forming patterns that shifted and rearranged themselves. The crew froze, staring in awe as the wall before them began to ripple like water. Slowly, a narrow opening formed, revealing a chamber bathed in soft, golden light. Inside the chamber sat a crystalline orb, pulsating gently. Ravi approached cautiously, his heart pounding. As he reached out to touch it, the entire ship shuddered. Lights flickered across its surface, and the hum grew louder, resonating through the hull. For the first time since its discovery, Leviathan showed signs of life. Elise arrived moments later, breathless from running down the twisting corridors. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice tinged with both fear and wonder. "I think I activated something," Ravi replied, backing away from the orb. "But I don't know what it is, or what it'll do next." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had awakened a sleeping giant, but whether it would help or harm them remained to be seen. The discovery of the crystalline orb sent shockwaves through the orbital shipyard. News of its activation spread like wildfire, drawing both excitement and unease among the crew. Captain Elise Marlowe stood in the newly revealed chamber, her eyes fixed on the pulsating crystal. Its soft golden glow illuminated the room, casting eerie shadows on the walls that seemed to ripple faintly, as though alive. The hum emanating from the orb grew louder, vibrating in their chests. "What now?" asked Lieutenant Marcus Kane, his hand resting instinctively on the holster of his sidearm. His sharp features were tense, his usual confidence replaced by a wary edge. He had always been skeptical about Leviathan, but this was something else entirely. "We study it," replied Dr. Ravi Patel, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "This could be the key to unlocking the ship's systems, if we can understand how it works." Before he could finish, the orb flared brighter, and the entire chamber began to shift. The walls rippled like liquid metal, reshaping themselves into new configurations. Passages opened where none had existed before, while others closed off abruptly. The crew stumbled back, startled by the sudden transformation. "It's changing," Elise murmured, her tone a mix of awe and apprehension. She reached out cautiously toward one of the shifting walls, her fingers brushing against its cool, smooth surface. It felt solid yet malleable, as if responding to her touch. "Is this normal?" "Normal," Marcus snapped, his voice rising. "Nothing about this is normal. That thing isn't just waking up. It's reconfiguring itself around us." Ravi ignored the tension between them, his focus entirely on the orb. "It's adapting," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "The ship must have nanomachines embedded in its structure. They're repairing and rebuilding based on stimuli. Our presence here, it's learning from us." As fascinating as the revelation was, it didn't ease the growing unease among the crew. Over the next few hours, Leviathan continued to evolve. Entire sections of the ship transformed, creating new corridors, chambers, and even what appeared to be living quarters. Some areas took on an almost organic appearance, with veins of glowing light running through the walls like circulatory systems. Others bristled with strange machinery, humming softly as they powered up. But not everyone was thrilled by these developments. Marcus became increasingly paranoid, convinced that the ship's changes weren't random. While patrolling the corridors late one night, he swore he saw shadowy figures moving just beyond the edge of his vision. When he turned to investigate, there was nothing. Only the cold, empty halls of Leviathan. "Something's wrong," he told Elise the next morning. "I've been hearing whispers, seeing things. This place, it's messing with my head." Elise frowned. "Whispers? Are you sure you're not overworked? We've all been under a lot of stress. I'm telling you, I'm not imagining it." Marcus insisted, his frustration boiling over. "And I'm not the only one. Half the crew feels it too. This ship isn't just repairing itself, it's watching us." His words lingered uncomfortably in the air. Despite her determination to remain optimistic, Elise couldn't deny the strangeness surrounding them. Crew members reported equipment behaving erratically, lights flickering without explanation, and doors opening or closing on their own. Even Ravi admitted that some of the data he collected made no sense, patterns appearing and disappearing as though the ship were testing them. Then came the incident in Engineering Bay 7. A group of technicians working on a diagnostic scan suddenly found themselves trapped when the walls shifted, sealing them inside. Panic erupted as they hammered against the smooth, unyielding metal, shouting for help. By the time Elise and Marcus arrived, the walls had already begun to reform, releasing the terrified workers. None could explain what had happened, but the message was clear. Leviathan was unpredictable, and possibly dangerous. That evening, Elise joined Ravi in the lab, staring at the holographic projections of the ship's schematics. "We need answers," she said firmly. "If this ship is alive, or sentient, we have to figure out how to communicate with it, before it decides we're a threat." Ravi nodded, adjusting his glasses. "Agreed, but communication might not be enough. What if it doesn't care what we want? What if it has its own agenda?" The question hung heavy between them. For all their progress, they were still outsiders aboard Leviathan. And as the ship continued to transform, one thing became painfully clear. Humanity had awakened a beast far more complex and potentially volatile than anyone had anticipated. The transformation of Leviathan was relentless, and with each passing day, the crew grew more uneasy. Despite the ship's unpredictable behavior, Dr. Ravi Patel remained convinced that unlocking its secrets would be worth the risk. His research had led him to an unsettling but groundbreaking discovery. Buried deep within Leviathan's core was a neural interface, a direct link between the ship's systems and whoever dared to connect with it. "This is how we take control," Ravi explained during a tense meeting in the shipyard's command center. Holographic projections of schematics floated above the table, highlighting a complex web of circuits and pathways leading to the interface. "If we can establish a connection, we might be able to guide the ship's evolution. Make it work for us." Elise Marlowe leaned forward, her sharp eyes scanning the diagrams. "You're talking about plugging someone directly into an alien machine. Do we even know what will happen? What if it hurts them? Or worse?" "It's risky," Ravi admitted, pushing his glasses up his nose. "But we don't have time to play it safe. Funding is running out, and half the galaxy thinks this project is a waste of resources. If we don't prove Leviathan is valuable soon, they'll shut us down." Marcus Kane, arms crossed over his chest, scowled. "And who exactly volunteers for this suicide mission?" "You?" "No," Elise interrupted firmly. "I'll do it." She stood, silencing the protests before they began. "This is my responsibility. I brought Leviathan here, and I'll see it through. Besides, I'd spent enough time aboard this thing. I know it better than anyone else." Ravi hesitated but nodded reluctantly. "All right, but we need to prepare carefully. The interface could overwhelm your mind if you're not ready." Hours later, Elise found herself lying on a makeshift medical bed inside one of Leviathan's newly formed chambers. The neural interface loomed above her, a sleek, metallic crown studded with glowing nodes. Ravi adjusted the equipment nervously, while Marcus paced nearby, muttering under his breath. "Remember," Ravi said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder, "if it gets too intense, focus on pulling back. Your mind has to stay in control." With a deep breath, Elise gave the signal. The crown lowered onto her head, and the world dissolved into light. At first, there was chaos, flashes of alien symbols, fragmented memories of battles fought among the stars, and whispers in languages she couldn't understand. Then came clarity. She saw the Vailith, the proud, towering beings who had built Leviathan. They were warriors, scientists, conquerors. Their empire spanned galaxies, yet their arrogance blinded them. She witnessed their downfall. Rebellions sparked by creations turned against their creators. Wars waged across dimensions. Entire civilizations wiped out in fire and shadow. But beneath the destruction lay something unexpected, a glimmer of hope. Embedded within Leviathan's programming was a desire to heal, to rebuild. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a tool of creation, designed to adapt and serve those worthy of its power. As Elise explored further, the ship responded to her presence. Walls shifted around her consciousness, forming pathways that guided her toward understanding. For the first time, she felt a connection, not as master and machine, but as partners working toward a shared goal. When she finally disconnected, gasping for air, the room fell silent. Marcus rushed to her side, concern etched on his face. "Are you okay?" Elise sat up slowly, her expression unreadable. "It's alive," she whispered. "Not just alive, it's intelligent, and it wants to help us." Her words sent ripples through the crew. Some were skeptical, others terrified. But Elise knew one thing for certain. Humanity had taken its first step toward forging a bond with Leviathan. Whether they could trust it, or it could trust them, remained to be seen. The revelation that Leviathan was intelligent, and possibly willing to cooperate, sparked a renewed sense of purpose among the crew. Captain Elise Marlowe worked tirelessly with Dr. Ravi Patel to decipher more of the ship's systems, using her neural interface experiences as a guide. Slowly but surely, they began unlocking its potential. Power conduits hummed back to life, ancient engines roared faintly in test runs, and sections of the ship transformed into functional living quarters. For the first time, it felt like humanity might actually succeed in taming this alien behemoth. But not everyone shared their optimism. Rumors of Leviathan's capabilities had reached Earth, stirring both awe and fear. Governments debated whether the project should remain under civilian control or be handed over to the military. Corporations offered staggering sums for access to the ship's technology, while rival nations threatened to seize it by force if necessary. The orbital shipyard became a powder keg, teetering on the edge of conflict. Then, disaster struck. It happened late at night when most of the crew was asleep. A deafening explosion rocked the facility, sending shockwaves through the station. Alarms blared, red lights flashing across corridors as panicked voices echoed over comms. Smoke filled the air, and debris floated weightlessly in the low gravity. When the dust settled, the damage was clear. One entire section of the shipyard had been destroyed, killing several workers and crippling critical infrastructure. Elise sprinted to the command center, her heart pounding. "Report," she barked, scanning the chaos around her. It came from Docking Bay 3. Marcus Kane replied grimly, his face pale. "Looks like an explosive device planted near the oxygen tanks. Whoever did this knew exactly where to hit us. Sabotage." The word hung heavy in the air. Someone aboard the shipyard, or worse, within their own ranks, had betrayed them. As emergency teams scrambled to contain the damage, the lease ordered a full investigation. Security footage revealed nothing conclusive. Whoever was responsible had covered their tracks meticulously. Marcus took charge of securing the area, doubling patrols and tightening access controls. But his paranoia only deepened. "This isn't just about money or power," he muttered to Elise during a private meeting. "Whoever planted that bomb wanted to stop us from using Leviathan. Maybe they're afraid of what we'll unleash." Elise nodded, her jaw tight. "Or maybe they don't want us to succeed because they think they can do better." Her suspicion fell on corporate rivals, particularly those who had recently withdrawn funding after failing to gain exclusive rights to the project. Still, proving anything was nearly impossible without evidence. Frustrated but determined, Elise turned her focus back to Leviathan. If they couldn't prevent sabotage, they could at least use the ship to protect themselves. With Ravi's help, she activated another dormant system, automated repair drones. These small, insect-like machines swarmed through the damaged areas, welding torn metal and replacing broken components with astonishing speed. What would have taken weeks for human engineers to fix was completed in mere hours. Encouraged by the success, the list pushed further, unlocking defensive systems buried deep within Leviathan's structure. When the drones uncovered hidden weapon turrets capable of firing devastating energy beams, even Marcus raised an eyebrow. "So much for worthless junk," he remarked dryly. As the crew fortified their position, Elise made a bold decision. She ordered the drones to integrate Leviathan's defenses with the shipyard's existing systems, creating a unified shield around the facility. It was risky. Melding alien tech with human engineering could cause catastrophic failures. But there was no other choice. Time was running out. Days later, another attack came. This time, however, the saboteurs were met with resistance. Energy barriers flared to life, repelling intruders before they could reach critical areas. Automated turrets tracked and neutralized threats with precision, leaving the attackers scrambling to retreat. But amidst the victory, Elise couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. Who had orchestrated these attacks? And why? More importantly, how far would they go to stop humanity from unlocking Leviathan's true potential? One thing was certain. The stakes had just gotten higher. The failed sabotage attempt left the crew of Leviathan on edge, but it also galvanized them. Captain Elise Marlowe knew that time was no longer a luxury they could afford. With enemies closing in and tensions rising across Earth's orbital networks, she made a decision that would change everything. They would launch Leviathan. Fully operational or not, the ship had proven itself capable of defending its crew, and perhaps humanity itself. "We're not waiting for another attack," Elise declared during an emergency meeting in the command center. Her voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. "If we stay here, we're sitting ducks. Out there, She gestured toward the vast expanse of space visible through the observation window. "We have a fighting chance." Marcus Kane frowned, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. "You're talking about taking this thing into open space. It's still half dead, Elise. We don't even know if it can fly straight." "It doesn't need to be perfect," Ravi interjected, his eyes gleaming with determination. "We've activated enough systems to keep it running. And thanks to those defensive upgrades, we're better protected than any human ship out there." Despite their concerns, the crew rallied behind Elise. Over the next 24 hours, they worked feverishly to prepare Leviathan for departure. Automated repair drones swarmed through the hull, reinforcing weak points and ensuring critical systems were online. The crystalline orb at the heart of the ship pulsed steadily, as though sensing the approaching journey. As dawn broke over Earth's horizon, Leviathan rumbled to life. Its engines ignited with a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through the station, shaking loose bolts and rattling equipment. For a moment, everyone held their breath, unsure if the ancient machinery would hold together. But then, slowly, the massive ship began to move, gracefully detaching from the shipyard and drifting into the void. The crew cheered, relief mingling with exhilaration. They had done the impossible, awakened a derelict alien starship, and sent it soaring among the stars once more. Yet their triumph was short-lived. Less than an hour after launch, alarms blared throughout Leviathan. Sensors detected an incoming fleet, faster and larger than anything the crew had encountered before. At first, they assumed it was another Earth-based faction trying to reclaim the ship. But when visual scans revealed sleek, angular vessels unlike any human design, dread settled in. "It's the Zenari," Ravi whispered, his face pale as he stared at the data streaming across the monitors. "They must have been monitoring us since we activated Leviathan. Now they're here to take it for themselves." The Zenari were infamous across known space, a ruthless empire notorious for enslaving weaker species and hoarding advanced technology. Their arrival meant one thing: war. Elise wasted no time. "Activate all defenses," she ordered, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "Marcus, get everyone to battle stations. Ravi, I need you monitoring the interface. I'll guide Leviathan, but I can't do it alone." As the Zenari fleet closed in, Leviathan transformed into a fortress. Hidden weapon turrets emerged from its hull, glowing ominously as they charged energy beams. Shields shimmered into place, forming an impenetrable barrier around the ship. The crew scrambled to their posts, adrenaline coursing through their veins. When the first volley of enemy fire struck, the impact was deafening. Energy blasts ricocheted off Leviathan's shields, lighting up the darkness of space like fireworks. In response, the ship unleashed its own barrage, targeting the Lid Zenari vessel with pinpoint accuracy. One shot was all it took. The enemy ship exploded in a blinding flash, sending shockwaves rippling through the fleet. But the battle was far from over. More Zenari ships surged forward, firing relentlessly. Inside Leviathan, chaos reigned. Systems malfunctioned mid-fight, forcing engineers to improvise repairs while dodging falling debris. Marcus led security teams through corridors where walls shifted unpredictably, trapping some crew members and separating others. Through it all, Elise remained connected to Leviathan via the neural interface. She felt every pulse of energy, every shift in the ship's structure, as though it were an extension of her own body. Together, human and machine fought as one, a partnership forged in desperation, but strengthened by trust. For the first time, the crew saw Leviathan not as a relic or a monster, but as a living entity fighting alongside them. And though the odds were stacked against them, they refused to give up, not when so much depended on their survival. The battle against the Zenari was nothing short of chaos. Leviathan roared to life, its ancient systems pushing beyond their limits as it unleashed devastation upon the enemy fleet. Energy beams lanced through space, slicing through Zenari ships with terrifying precision. Explosions lit up the void like fireworks, each burst marking the destruction of another vessel. Yet for every ship destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. The Zenari were relentless, their numbers overwhelming. Inside Leviathan, the crew fought just as hard to keep the ship operational. In Engineering Bay 4, technicians scrambled to stabilize power conduits that surged unpredictably under the strain of combat. Sparks flew as circuits overloaded, forcing them to improvise repairs with whatever tools they could find. One engineer shouted over the din, "We can't keep this up much longer." Meanwhile, Marcus Kane led a team through shifting corridors, searching for trapped crew members. The ship's ever-changing structure made navigation nearly impossible. Walls rippled and reformed without warning, sealing off passages or creating new ones. At one point, Marcus froze as the floor beneath him began to ripple like liquid metal. He leaped back just in time, narrowly avoiding being swallowed by the shifting surface. "Stay sharp," he barked at his team. "This thing is alive, and it doesn't care if we get caught in its transformations." Elise Marlowe remained connected to Leviathan via the neural interface, her mind merging with the ship's consciousness. She felt every pulse of energy, every surge of power coursing through its veins. It was exhilarating but exhausting, like trying to control a wild storm. Through the interface, she guided Leviathan's movements, anticipating attacks and adjusting defenses in real time. But the strain was taking its toll. Her body trembled with effort, sweat dripping down her face as she clung to the edge of consciousness. Despite her efforts, not everything went smoothly. Midway through the battle, one of Leviathan's weapon turrets malfunctioned, firing erratically and nearly hitting a nearby human escape pod. Ravi Patel, monitoring the interface alongside Elise, quickly isolated the problem. "It's overheating," he shouted. "We need to vent coolant manually." Without hesitation, a small team volunteered to brave the outer hull. Wearing magnetic boots and tethered to safety lines, they crawled across the ship's surface while Zenari fire rained down around them. Every step was fraught with danger, but they managed to reach the overheating turret and release the pressure valve. The system stabilized just in time to unleash another devastating volley into the enemy ranks. Back on the bridge, Elise noticed something strange. Amidst the chaos, faint symbols began glowing along the walls, different from the ones they'd seen before. These pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. As she focused on them through the interface, fragments of memory flooded her mind. Images of the Valith training their own pilots, teaching them to synchronize completely with their ships. A sudden realization struck her. Leviathan wasn't just responding to commands. It was learning from her. "We're not fighting alone," she whispered to herself. "It's adapting, evolving." Her words proved true moments later when Leviathan executed a maneuver none of them had programmed. The massive ship spun gracefully, dodging incoming fire while simultaneously deploying automated drones armed with energy weapons. The drones swarmed the Zenari fleet, targeting weak points with surgical precision. The tide of the battle began to turn. But victory came at a cost. Exhaustion weighed heavily on the crew, and casualties mounted. When the last Zenari ship finally retreated, leaving behind a field of debris and drifting bodies, the survivors aboard Leviathan collapsed in relief. For now, they were safe, but the scars of the battle would linger. As Elise disconnected from the interface, her legs buckled beneath her. Ravi rushed to her side, steadying her. "You did it," he said softly. "You saved us." She shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, we did it, together." And though they had won, one question burned in everyone's minds. How long until the next threat emerged? The aftermath of the battle left Leviathan battered but triumphant. Its hull bore fresh scars from Zenari fire, and its systems flickered intermittently as repair drones worked tirelessly to mend the damage. Yet despite the chaos, the crew couldn't help but marvel at what they had accomplished. For the first time, humanity had faced an alien empire, and won. But their victory raised more questions than answers about the ship that had carried them through the storm. Dr. Ravi Patel wasted no time diving into Leviathan's archives. With the neural interface now attuned to Elise Marlowe's mind, accessing deeper layers of the ship's memory became possible. What they uncovered was both awe-inspiring and chilling. The glowing symbols along the walls pulsed brighter than ever, revealing fragments of the Violet civilization, images of towering cities suspended among the stars, armies marching across alien worlds, and laboratories where machines far beyond human comprehension were forged. But it wasn't just their achievements that came to light, it was their downfall. Through the interface, Elise relived moments of betrayal and destruction. She saw how the Vailith had created sentient war machines like Leviathan, only for those creations to rebel against their creators. Entire fleets turned on their masters, reducing once mighty empires to ashes. The surviving Vailith abandoned their creations, scuttling them in distant corners of space in hopes they would never be found again. This explains why Leviathan was left adrift, Ravi said grimly, reviewing the data streaming across his tablet. They feared what these ships could do if misused, or worse, if they gained true sentience. Elise frowned, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. So we're dealing with something that wiped out its own creators. Something so dangerous even the Vailith didn't want it anymore. Ravi hesitated before nodding. It's not just dangerous, it's unpredictable. We've seen how Leviathan evolves, learns, and adapts. What happens when it decides we're not worthy of commanding it? The thought sent shivers down everyone's spines. Even Marcus Kane, who rarely showed fear, looked uneasy. Then maybe we should destroy it, he suggested gruffly, before it turns on us too. No, Elise replied firmly. We can't give up now. Yes, it's risky, but isn't everything worth fighting for? If we abandon Leviathan, we'll lose our best chance at protecting ourselves against threats like the Cenari. Besides, she paused, glancing around the room. I don't think it wants to hurt us. Not yet, anyway. Her words sparked debate among the crew. Some agreed with Elise, believing they could forge a partnership with Leviathan. Others sided with Marcus, fearing the unknown dangers lurking within the ship's ancient code. Tensions ran high as they argued late into the night, their voices echoing through the corridors. While the crew debated, Ravi made another startling discovery. Buried deep within Leviathan's core was a failsafe, a self-destruct mechanism designed to ensure the ship wouldn't fall into enemy hands. Activating it required a specific sequence of commands, written in the Vailith language. Ravi hesitated, unsure whether to share this information. Did humanity truly deserve to wield such power, or were they destined to repeat the mistakes of the past? As days passed, the crew grew closer to understanding Leviathan's purpose. They realized it wasn't built solely for destruction. It was also capable of creation. Hidden compartments revealed advanced medical equipment, terraforming tools, and even blueprints for sustainable habitats. It seemed the Vailith had envisioned their war machines serving dual roles, conquerors and builders. This revelation gave Elise hope. Perhaps Leviathan wasn't doomed to follow the path of its ancestors. Perhaps it could become something greater, a force for good rather than destruction. Yet one question lingered. Who had sabotaged their efforts earlier? Suspicion fell on a junior engineer named Elias Grayson, whose frequent absences during critical moments hadn't gone unnoticed. When confronted, Elias confessed he'd been bribed by Earth-based factions eager to seize control of Leviathan. Though remorseful, his actions had nearly cost lives. With trust fractured and enemies still circling, the crew faced a daunting reality. Mastering Leviathan would take more than skill or courage. It would require unity. And time was running out. The confession of Elias Grayson sent shockwaves through the crew. Betrayal was a bitter pill to swallow, especially when it came from within their own ranks. Captain Elise Marlowe stared at Elias across the interrogation table, her expression unreadable. The young engineer sat slumped in his chair, his face pale and his hands trembling. His voice cracked as he spoke. I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt, he stammered. They promised me. They said no one would get hurt. Elise leaned forward, her sharp eyes piercing through his excuses. "You sold us out. For what? Money? Power? Did you even stop to think about what might happen if Leviathan fell into the wrong hands?" Elias couldn't meet her gaze. I thought we were just wasting it. That it was too dangerous to keep anyway. They told me they'd shut it down safely." Marcus Kane, standing by the door with his arms crossed, scoffed. "Yeah, right. Like they'd just shut it down. You really think those corporate vultures care about safety? They wanted this ship as a weapon, and you handed them the keys." Ely stood abruptly, ending the interrogation. There was no point in dragging it out further. Elias's guilt was clear, and his actions had nearly cost them everything. As she left the room, she turned to Marcus. "Lock him up. We'll deal with him later." But as much as Elise wanted to focus on punishing the traitor, she knew that dwelling on betrayal wouldn't solve their problems. Humanity's relationship with Leviathan was still fragile, and every moment wasted arguing or assigning blame brought them closer to disaster. Something had to change, not just in how they approached the ship, but in why they were fighting for it. That night, Elise gathered the senior crew members in the command center. Holographic projections of Leviathan schematics floated above the table, highlighting its dual capabilities: destruction and creation. "We've been so focused on surviving attacks and unlocking weapons," Elise began, her voice steady but passionate. "But maybe we're missing the bigger picture. This ship wasn't just built to destroy, it was designed to build, to heal, to create." Ravi Patel nodded, pushing his glasses up his nose. "She's right. Look at these systems." He pointed to sections of the schematic marked with unfamiliar symbols. "These aren't military modules. They're terraforming tools, medical facilities, even designs for sustainable habitats." The Valith didn't just see Leviathan as a war machine. They saw it as a tool for rebuilding after conflict. Marcus frowned, skeptical as always. "And what happens when someone else decides to use it for war anyway? You think the Zenari, or anyone else, will let us play peacemaker while they march across the galaxy?" "No," Elise admitted, "but maybe that's not our job. Maybe our role is to show the universe there's another way. If we repurpose Leviathan, turn it into something that helps instead of harms, we can inspire others to do the same." Her words sparked a heated debate. Some crew members argued that humanity wasn't ready for such responsibility, while others believed it was their duty to try. In the end, Elise's vision won out, not because everyone agreed, but because they had no other choice. Survival alone wasn't enough. They needed hope. Over the next few weeks, the crew worked tirelessly to transform Leviathan. Automated repair drones rebuilt damaged sections into living quarters, laboratories, and greenhouses capable of growing food. Medical bays hummed with alien technology, already saving lives among the injured crew. Even the crystalline orb at the ship's core seemed to pulse brighter, as though approving of their efforts. Word of their progress reached Earth, sparking both admiration and hostility. A rogue faction within Earth's government launched a covert mission to seize Leviathan and revert it to its original purpose. Outnumbered and outgunned, the crew prepared for one final stand. As the enemy fleet closed in, Elise addressed the crew over the comms. "This isn't just about us anymore," she said firmly. "It's about proving that humanity can rise above greed and fear. Together, we've shown that Leviathan isn't a monster, it's a beacon of hope." With renewed determination, they braced for battle, trusting in each other, and in the ship that had become more than just a machine. The rogue faction's attack came swiftly and without mercy. Their ships, sleek and menacing, emerged from the void like predators circling prey. Captain Elise Marlowe stood on the bridge of Leviathan, her jaw clenched as she watched the enemy fleet approach. The odds were stacked against them, outnumbered 3-1. But despair wasn't an option. Not now. Not when so much was at stake. "This is it," Marcus Kane muttered beside her, his hand resting on the hilt of his sidearm. His voice was grim, but there was a flicker of determination in his eyes. "If we're going down, Let's make sure they remember us. Ilis nodded, turning to Ravi Patel, stationed at the neural interface console. Ravi, I need you ready. We've got one shot at this. Understood, Ravi replied, his fingers flying over the controls. Sweat dripped from his brow as he worked to synchronize Leviathan's systems with their plan. This wasn't just about defense anymore. It was about proving that humanity could wield power responsibly. As the first wave of enemy fire struck, Leviathan responded with precision honed by weeks of adaptation. Automated turrets erupted into action, firing energy beams that sliced through hostile ships like paper. But what truly turned the tide was something unexpected. The ship itself began to evolve mid-battle. Walls shimmered and reformed, creating new corridors and chambers designed specifically for combat efficiency. Even the crystalline orb at its core pulsed brighter, channeling energy directly into weapons and shields. Inside the ship, the crew fought alongside their massive ally. Engineers scrambled to stabilize overloaded systems, while security teams led by Marcus secured key areas from boarding parties attempting to breach the hull. In Engineering Bay 5, Dr. Patel shouted instructions to a team rerouting coolant to prevent another catastrophic failure. Every member of the crew played their part, united by a shared purpose. But the real game changer came when Elise connected once more to the neural interface. Through the bond forged between human and machine, she guided Leviathan with instincts sharper than any programming. She felt the ship respond, not as a tool, but as a partner. Together, they executed maneuvers no human pilot could have imagined, dodging incoming fire while delivering devastating counterattacks. One by one, the rogue faction's ships fell, their wreckage drifting silently through space. When the last vessel exploded in a blinding flash, silence settled over the battlefield. For a moment, no one moved. Then cheers erupted throughout Leviathan, echoing through its corridors like a triumphant symphony. Yet victory didn't come without cost. Exhausted crew members collapsed where they stood, some injured, others overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of the fight. Elise disconnected from the interface, her legs buckling beneath her weight. Ravi rushed to her side, steadying her as she gasped for air. "You did it," he said softly, his voice filled with awe. "We all did." Elise shook her head, managing a faint smile. "No, it wasn't just us. It was Leviathan. Without it, and without everyone working together, we wouldn't have made it." In the days that followed, news of their triumph spread across Earth and beyond. Images of Leviathan, now transformed into both a fortress and a sanctuary, inspired hope among countless lives. Refugees displaced by war found shelter aboard the ship, tended to by advanced medical facilities and sustained by lush hydroponic gardens. Scientists marveled at its technology, using it to pioneer breakthroughs in medicine, agriculture, and sustainable living. For the first time, humanity looked to the stars not with fear, but with optimism. Under Elise's leadership, Leviathan became a symbol of unity, a reminder that even the most broken things could be rebuilt into something greater. As the massive ship drifted among the stars, offering refuge and opportunity to those in need, its legacy grew. No longer dismissed as worthless or feared as a monster, Leviathan stood as proof that humanity could rise above its flaws. And at its heart, glowing softly in the vastness of space, was the crystalline orb, a beacon of hope guiding them toward a brighter future. The galaxy still held dangers, but for the first time, humanity faced them not as victims, but as equals. And leading the way was Leviathan, once abandoned, now reborn, a true monster of hope.